Okay, in this video we're going to add a little bit of flexibility. You can see that I've just left the game running from that last fix I did where I had the balls don't die, the bricks die, um, but the balls don't die. And you see that the levels play out. So you can actually use this to quite nicely check that your levels end. And there you go, look, all the bricks destroyed. Levels end. Okay. And it's quite interesting to watch just the game clear the level. But there you go. Right, in this video, we're going to add a little bit of flexibility. So you've seen the invader, because I briefly showed it in one of the videos. So if we go, let's get that back on screen. So if we go to leveldata.js and we force, it's currently forcing level 1. So let's force wherever the invader was. That was level 13. 13. So let's force that and let's just have a look at that. So I'm going to save level data. I'm going to go back to my game code. I just want to, um, I don't want it to kill the bricks. So I'm going to say false to clear the bricks. And I'm going to say false to kill the ball. So I just want it to be on screen. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Make sure I haven't got anything else that needs saving. Everything else is blue. Right, so go back to my browser and refresh. Another thing I want to show you, Chrome's got an incredible browser with a built-in complete programming debugging system. You could actually just use the browser to develop. If you, when you're on the browser, press F12, you get the development window come up. Okay. Now what this does, this lets you look at all the code. So if I open up these little tabs, you might have to drag this. I've obviously opened this before, and so you can drag it, close it a little bit. And I can load up any of the levels. So there's Invader. And you can see you've got all these other things. These are programming things, breakpoints, call stacks, and you can examine things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a quick one. At the top here, you've got controls, you've got pause. So I can actually, if I want to really have a look, is press pause. It's actually stopped on the current line of code that the browser was executing, which is somewhere in the timer there. We can carry on with it. But one of the other things you can do is you can put breakpoints. So I'm an invader here, and I'm going to click here, just to the side of the number, on this line. So this is the construct. So this will force the thing to stop when it generates the level. And there you go. So it went back to the title screen, just about to set up the invader level, and it got to here. I'm not going to take you through this now, but this is actually quite a useful thing if you want it to stop at a certain point, and then you can start looking at values. So you can look at what parameters you got given. So there's the bricks. There's no bricks in the brick array. You get the screen information, and you can see how it highlights it. So you can see it's highlighted the black area of the screen. It's super, super powerful. But that's the debugger. So sometimes you might just want the debugger open so you can just pause the game. And, you know, breakpoints is one way of pausing, but you can pause it so I can stop it there and then play it. Stop. It screws up timers and things, which you can't really, that's one of the problems when you're debugging, when you've got timers firing left, right, and center. So you'll see where the ball is now. If I just carry on running, it's like, whoa, the game continued running off the back of the timers. It's a bit of a daft thing, really. But it just lets you do some basic functionality. Okay, so you can just do a quick pause. Right, so if we just look at the, let's play the game. So let's start a new game. Yeah, so this is how I had the invader set up. And it's all very nice and it animates and lots of other things. But one of the things that's a problem is the aspect ratio. It's stretched. And that's because the bricks are twice as wide as they are high. And to do any sort of interesting block patterns, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we can do square pixels. And we can write a lot of code in the invader code to make this possible. But it would be better if we had some general code available that lets us lay out bricks and lets us change to a specific size, so stretch it in the X and Y direction. So that's what we're going to do. So we can fix it and modify the invader level so we get an invader that looks sort of properly like an invader. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go back to Notepad and I'm going to look for my invader code. So I'm going to open invader and this is the code. So we're using currently Flash layout. Now, we used Flash layout because that uses, if we look at Invader, it extends two states. So if we go at the two states code, Flash layout does this. It does this visibility change for us. The normal way that we put blocks on screen is they're always visible. But with this Invader, we wanted these two frames. So we need to build something that lets us do this visibility change. But you can see with this code, and the reason we haven't been able to do it with Invader, is that the size is fixed. It's fixed so that we can scale, and let's just change that, but it scales both the X and the Y. So if I load up Invader again, and I change my scale, which is this number here, so I had 0.7, so let's just make it 2. I'll make the other one 2. Just save that, and then refresh my browser. If I press F12, it'll get rid of the debug stuff. So it's made it bigger, but you can see the problem is that the blocks are still rectangular in shape. And I can't do anything. All I can do is change the size. I cannot change the dimensions. So that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and put some code in to do that. So it would make sense if we look at two states again. So let's load up two states. Two states extends character. So it's probably sensible to put this code in the class for character, where it can already lay out some blocks of a fixed size from a block map, but we want to make it a bit more flexible. So we're making something that lets us do a layout, but lets us control it a little bit better. And you'll see also with this one that this bit here says how far from the left do we start, and this bit says how far do the blocks need to be apart. So these two values are fixed as well. So this isn't very flexible. This will do a standard block pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new version of this that gives us more flexibility on the size that the thing is and the spread between the blocks and the starting point from the left hand side. Okay, so just below this, and make sure it's above this line. So I'm just doing it just above that comment where I showed what a block map looked like. I'm going to create another function or another method for the character class. Now, because it's going to be more flexible, it's going to need more parameters. So whereas we only needed the block map we want to draw and the size we want it to be, we want all these other values. Okay, so we want the block map, so we're going to have that again. But we actually want the left-hand margin. So left, I'll call it left margin. We want to be given the spread. So how far horizontally and vertically do we want all these things to be? We want to be able to say the size, but it's not size, it's going to be a scale. And we're doing it like that because it's going to be a vector2 value. So it's going to have an X and Y component. Same as spread has as well. And then we want the visibility. So whether we show or hide the brick. So we've made, this is going to be super custom. So what I've now done is I've pressed enter on the end of that line, and then I open a brace because I want a block of code, and then press enter again, and then I'm going to close the brace. And you'll see that it's highlighted in red to say that's the open and close of that. So I'm going to go back up to that line. I'm going to put a few blank lines in so I've got some space to work. And what we're going to do is we're going to process a block map. So the initial code is going to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy those lines that are inside perform layout. So I've got the first 4 line, the var y, and I've got the 4 var x, then I've got the var color, and then I've got the if to check if the color's greater than 0. Then I've got the block setting line, and then I've got 3 braces at the end. So I'm just copying all those lines. And I'm just going to go here into our new code, and I'm going to paste it in. Now it looks a mess, so I'm going to tidy that up a little bit because I want it to be indented so that everything lines up and it makes it nice and easy to follow. Okay. Now, obviously, that isn't what I want the code to do. Okay. So this bit's fine. I want it to loop across the whole block map. I want it to pick up the color, and then I want to check. And I'm only working with colors that are bigger than the first color. Okay. So colors 1, 2, 3, etc. So naught is like a dummy placeholder, remember? So when I have this map, wherever there's a 0, so like here, I'm saying don't put a brick. And that's the bit of code that does that. It says, oh, it's 0, ignore it. Move on to the next one. Okay, now this time, what we're going to do, the size doesn't matter. So we're just going to put a 1 in for that. The margin, we're going to be given a value, left margin. So let's replace that with left margin. Now, Notepad++ should help us here and say, you've got something called left margin. So I'm just pressing enter to put that in. The spread is going to be the spread value we've been given. So we're going to type spread, and you'll see again, it's come up in the picker. So I'm going to press enter, and it goes in. Right, okay, so that creates the block, but I want to manipulate the block afterwards. I want to mess about with its scale, and I want to mess about with its visibility. Now, luckily, set block at, which is found in level set. So let's quickly have a look at that. You don't have to move from yours. You can just look. Set block at. It returns the block it's created, or the brick. Okay, so if we go back to character, open it up, I can capture a reference to that brick. So I'm going to call it B. So on this first line, I'm going to say var B equals, and then I'm going to say, right, okay, I'm going to run the set block at function, give it all these values. Notice they wrap round because it was getting too long. If I don't wrap that round, don't do this to yours, just it goes off the screen, which is always a real pain when we're coding. So it's nicer to control that by putting some enters in so that we control where everything is. Okay, so I'm controlling what that looks like. I can tab it in. I can put comments at the end of these lines if I want to, but I'm just breaking it across in a few lines. Can't do that in Python and languages like that, but in this one I can. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying put me a brick using these values, but when you're finished, give me a reference to it, which I'm going to call B. Now, what this allows me to do is to say, okay, I want to change the scale of this. So I'm going to say, use my scale value and change it. So you'll see that if you want to have a look at where scale is, I think that's in Sprite, scale 2, somewhere, probably further up. There it is, scale 2, which takes a 2-dimensional value, so an X and Y value, and uses that to control the scale. So you can stretch in either direction. Okay, so back to character. So we're changing the scale, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say, right, okay, we also want to, on the next line down, change the visible property of a sprite and set it to whatever the visibility we were given. Okay, so we're saying visible, whatever this value in this parameter up here was, that's what we're going to change it to. Okay, so really we shouldn't copy and paste, but I just wanted to save a little bit of time for you. And you can see when I click on these braces, if the final one does not match up with that first one, then you've gone wrong. So just double check them, and you can see they all match up. So there's 4 closing braces, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 opening braces. Same with brackets and things. It'll always tell you what the matching brackets are, square brackets. And you can see that that finishes off the function call, that finishes off the function call, etc. Okay, so we've now got that. So we can now go back to Invader and make a few changes, hopefully, to make use of this new custom way of laying things out. So let's load Invader back up. Right, so at the minute we were using that flashing one because it handled flashing and things for us. Okay, so what we're actually going to do this time, so we're going to comment these 2 lines out of Invader. I'm not deleting them because I might go, ooh, it's not working. I might need to go back and change that. So what I'm now going to do then is I'm going to just say this dot, and it was perform custom, and this is where Visual Studio Code's a little bit more superior. It can hunt through the whole source and tell you what values and variables and function names and things you've got are and show them in the picker. Notepad++ doesn't do this. Now it was called perform custom layout. Now that was in character, remember? So one way of avoiding that is say, right, well, I'm going to use this. So I'm going to double click it so it highlights it, copy it, go back to Invader, and just make sure I spell it correctly. Because if you don't spell it right, the funny thing is, the browser won't moan at you. It'll just won't do that thing. And you'll have no idea where it's got broken. Unless you start pulling the debugger up. But we'll come on to that. Right, so it needed 5 different things. Block map, left-hand margin, a spread, a scale, and a visibility. Okay, so we're going to provide it with that information. And I'm going to put each one of these on a separate line. So the first thing is going to be our layout. So that was layout 1. So lay 1. You see how it knew about lay 1 in here, but it can only see it in this file. I don't know if there's a way to control that. Right, so I'm pressing enter. I'm going to put a few tabs in. Then I'm going to put my margin. So I'm going to put 50. So 50 pixels from the left-hand side. So what you can do to help yourself here, you can say, right, oh, block map to use. So you can put comments. You can, on the next line, you can then say, okay, let's put left-hand margin. And then this will help you. Where's my cursor gone? Right, so I'm on the next line down. So the next thing was I think it was spread. So let's just double check in character. Yeah, the spread. So the gap between bricks. So back to invade art. So the spread. So we need to say new vector 2, because that's how we specify these things. And we're going to put 26 and 26. So we're going to make the bricks 25 by 25. So we want them to have a little gap between them. We don't have to. We can overlay them, and you can do other funny things if you wanted to. So that's the spread. So we're going to put comma and then a comment. Spread between bricks. Right, and then the next value was the scale. You can't ever see the cursor very well in this. Right, so the scale again is going to be a vector 2. Right, the bricks are, I think they're 50 by 20. Now we can confirm that by looking at the CSS for the brick. Yeah, 50 pixels wide, 20 pixels high. I want them 25 by 25, so I've got to do a little bit of maths now. So I want to, if it's 50 and I want it to be 25, then my scale in the horizontal direction needs to be 50%. So that's 0.5. If it's 20 and I want it to 25, then that's going to be 125%, which is 1.25. So that's my scale. So I've put a comment, scale. And then the last thing we want to do, the final value, was to say whether we want to make it visible or not. So we do for this one, but we're going to test it with one first. Okay, so we've taken what we had before, but we've got a chance to put some custom things in where we start it, the gap and the scale and the visibility. So these are things we didn't have direct control over before. Okay, so we're going to save that. We're going to make sure that we've saved character. So I can see that that's red, so that needs saving. And then I'm going to go back to my code and see how broken it is. So I'm just going to let the demo come up. It's broken. Okay, so we need to look at what we've got wrong on that. Okay. Right, okay, so that's not what we expected. So it's like, dear, what do we do? So let's have a look at, let's bring the debugger up and see if there's anything obvious. So I've pressed F12. Oh, I'll press F12 again. Press F12, and up here is the number of errors. So there's something generating lots and lots of errors. So if we make sure we have a look at the console window, so there's loads of different windows that you can look at. If it's not open, just click. I think console's by default open. Don't know why you get the what's new window. But it's got things like, oh, can't read tick. So yeah, fine, that's all right. Let's just make sure we've saved everything. What have we messed with? We've messed with moving sprite. No, we haven't. We've messed with invade. Character was one, wasn't it? So character and invader. Oh, it's easier to find them on here. Let's just save. Right, they're all saved. Go back. Let's refresh this again then. So with the debugger on, let's just have a look, see what's happening. Ah, right. Okay, what's this first error here? New scale is not found. Brick.scale2. So if we click on that, it can take us to that code, and it's highlighting the error. And in fact, this is actually a stupid error because that is... Ah, that's right. Okay, I know what that is. So let's fix that one first. So if we go back to our notepad, so that was in Sprite. So let's just open Sprite. Easiest way is there. And it was in scale 2. So it's this line here. This code, new scale doesn't exist in here. Now this is an example why we shouldn't copy paste. Because when I created this ages ago, a couple of years ago, I took all of this, copied it, pasted it in, and then made modifications. But the problem with doing that is that you've got code that's legal that might not logically be correct. So in this case, it's not even it's logically correct. It's just that this doesn't exist. So it's what we call in this case in Java, this is a runtime error because it's trying to locate and it's looked for a global variable called new scale and there isn't one. So we need to change that to vector to scale.x. Okay, so we just need to change that. So we're going to save that and see if that fixes that error. So that's just sprite.js scale2 function at about line 120, and then it's the final line in the code that alters the ordering of drawing based on the scale. Okay, so I've saved that. I'm gonna go back and let's see if it gets rid of that error and fix it all. Right, well, it's got rid of all the errors, but it hasn't fixed it. Right, okay, so we've got another problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of this debugger to try and find this problem. So let's find our invader level. And there it is. Right, so it's going to be something to do with this, perform custom layout. It's the code we've just written. So if we go to character.js, open that. So there's perform custom layout. it's like the block's not getting set in the right place. So that's done by the set block at code. So that was in set block at is in, I think that's level set. Yeah, so let's open level set. And I'm going to put a breakpoint on this line. So this is the first line of code in set block at. So let's just wait for the thing to generate again. Right, okay, so it's about to put, so I just left it running, put my breakpoint there. Right, now we can have a look at all these values. So we've got, these are the parameters we got given. Now I think we can no, we haven't got them in the watch. Oh, we can look at the local values. So if we scroll this little window here, you can see that we've got pos, and you can move your mouse over. Pos is 2 0, so that's from the block map. So that's the third column along, first row. Color, cyan. So that looks right. Size 1, remember, size didn't matter. Margin 50, yeah, that's what we put. And then the spread, 26 across, 26 down. Yeah. Okay. Right, so this little bit of code here calculates where the block's going to be physically on screen. So what we can do now is we can step. And you see this little icon here. It says step over next function call. So let's just do that, shall we? So let's do F10, because that's what that is. Or I can click the icon, and it's done that line. Okay, so it's now calculated left. So let's have a look at left. And it says nan. Now, it doesn't mean it's your nan. It means not a number. It's a special number. All numbers in JavaScript, for whatever reason, are stored as floating point numbers. And so these are fractional numbers. And a nan is a number that isn't a number. So there's some calculation happened. And obviously we've got a calculation there, some multiplication and addition. There's a calculation that's happened. And it's attempted to do it, but what it's ended up with doesn't make any sense. So instead of mark crashing or anything like that, what it's done is it's gone, right, okay, that's not a number, and it lets things use, and it's up to the programmer to like look for not numbers. Okay, and in JavaScript, because it fails silently, unless you've got the debugging window out, and you don't really know what's happened. Luckily for us, we had a visual effect which went, that's not right. So it gives us a chance to track it down. So let's just have a look at this. So there's a calculation done with 3 numbers, which margin was just 50, position was a number, and spread was a number. So we've got spread.width times position x, which is 2. So that's 26 times 2. And then we've got margin.x. Oh, hang on a minute. Margin's 50. Oh, hang on. I assumed, because I wrote this 2 years ago, that margin was a number, but it's not. It's a vector too, which is why I've got margin.x. So by supplying it with a number, which wasn't a vector number, a vector value, the code's just happened, and this is one of the things with JavaScript. It doesn't do type checking. So it's gone, yeah, you want to send that? You give me that. I could have put Donkey Kong as the size, and it would have happily tried to multiply Donkey Kong by these other values. But that's JavaScript. Right, so it isn't the code I've written that's wrong. It's the value I've passed. Okay, so this one's going to break as well, which is why they become undefined, so they're treated as 0. So it's why it ends up in the top left-hand corner. Right, okay, so let's go back to our code, and the fix is to just change invader. So let's look at invader. So instead of this, it shouldn't be just 50. It should be like the other two. It should be new vector 2, lowercase, vector 2, and let's do it 50 by 50. So 50, the margin is the left-hand top margin. Okay, right, okay, so let's try that. Let's save that. Go back to our code. We've got the debugger active, so I'm going to get rid of that breakpoint, and I'm going to, no, let's leave that breakpoint there. Let's refresh and just wait for the the demo to activate. Right, so it's stopped at the debugger line again. So let's just do F10 or click on this little icon here. Right, let's examine left by moving. Oh, look, it's got a number. Let's do the top. So it's going to put the block at 102.50. Let's click on the little red dot to get rid of the breakpoint and tell it to carry on running. So resume. And look at that. The invaders appeared. And then disappeared. Then appeared. And then disappeared. Right. So what that's a good example of is making sure you've tested things before you too much code. So you should do a little bit of code, do some tests, make sure everything's working. Right. Let's just go back and finish the invader. So we've got this for the first layout, and now we want to do exactly the same. So we could cut and paste. We could just go copy and paste and change a few values, but we're not going to get burnt from a previous copy and paste. We're going to type the whole thing out. So it's going to be identical, apart from it's going to be lay 2, and we're going to say false for the visibility. So we're going to just use the picker to help us. It knows custom layout's been used because it's in this code. So this dot lay 2, oh, lay, this dot lay 2, there it is. And we're going to use the same format, and we're going to put a blank line each time. We're going to put it at the exact same position, so vector to 50-50, otherwise they'll be misaligned. Make sure you put a comma at the end. New. Notice that Notepad knew that we wanted to just carry on from that indent level, which was nice of it. 26, 26. Same scale, so 50%, whoops, 50% in the horizontal direction and 125% in the vertical direction, and then we were going to say false. Okay, remember, actually we're only using the invader to test. So how a lot of my things come about is that I'm write a little bit of code to test some other code. So we're only using the invader. There's not much to the invader, is there? Just a couple of maps. So we're just using the invader to test the perform custom layout routine that we've written. So let's just give that a save, and hopefully we'll have an animated invader on screen. So let's refresh. You can leave, I'll leave the debugger open, it doesn't really matter. And there you go. The only problem with making animated sprites like this in the game is your problem of when they disappear, they're not colliding, and if you get caught in a certain position, it can be a bit of a screwball situation. Okay, so we've added some functionality that we can now make use of to finish off this animated invader, which we'll do in the next video. But that was quite an interesting, nice little bug to track down, and I showed you a little bit of the debugging. That's just scraping the very, very, very top surface of the debugging system in Chrome. It is pretty phenomenal. It's a full-on debugger, as good as getting on for as good as Visual Studio. Perfect for doing JavaScript debugging though. Okay, so I'll start the video there, and then the next one will be making that invader walk.